Hello everyone. I want to talk about something a little bit different today because it's outside of the normal realm of a first technical advisor, but it's really interesting to me and it's something I'm just sort of getting into. So as I learn more about it, I want to share it with all of you. Specifically, live streaming events. Live streaming First Tech Challenge events to the web for people to enjoy at home or to view a recording of later on. There are plenty of people in the area that have been doing this for years and know the ins and outs of everything very well. And I am just starting to scratch the surface and learn about it myself. But as I do, I plan to help you all out as well by sharing what I learn. Again, this is something that's outside of the normal realm of a first technical advisor. So if you are just starting out on your journey as a technical volunteer, you don't need to worry about doing this. This definitely isn't a requirement of the job. As you become more comfortable and as you have the capacity through having a bunch of other volunteers helping you, having venues that you're familiar with, you may want to start approaching these types of things in order to design a different or better experience for your events. So let's dig into how you actually make this all work. And I'm going to start with the camera and work our way over to the live stream box that's actually sending the signal out to the internet. So let's talk about cameras, because when you think about getting a camera feed of what's happening at a First Tech Challenge event, there are a few things you need to consider. And the first one is honestly how you're going to transport those cameras. Some cameras are pretty big, bulky, expensive, easy to break, and these are not necessarily the types of things that you want to be carrying around in your car with a field perimeter or game elements, that sort of thing. So if you have the option to find a camera that's relatively small, like this one, then that may be a good choice. I'm going to talk more about this camera in a moment, but I just want to list out the aspects that I think about when looking for cameras first. Once you think about how to transport it, you also need to think about how to mount it in or around the field. Some things you should consider are the fact that the camera is an optional add-on to the First Tech Challenge tournament experience. So it definitely should not interfere with gameplay, and you probably want to be mindful of where it's positioned so that it doesn't get trampled by students as they try to put a robot on or take it off the field. But you also want to think about where you can get a good view of the field. Most First Tech Challenge tournaments that live stream out have some sort of view where they put a camera up high looking down. Maybe they already had some sort of stand where they were putting a timer display for the students participating in the match, and they mounted a camera on top of that. Or you're just sort of putting a camera in the stand somewhere with an audience member so it can see a wide shot of everything that's going on and get a view similar to what the folks in person are getting. Or you're getting a camera closer to the field, on the field itself, whatever the case may be. Just keep in mind that it shouldn't interact with gameplay or the students who are doing very much more important things as they're interacting with the field. You also need to think about how you're going to power it, because if you are going to live stream for a whole day, pretty much no matter what battery you buy, it's not going to be enough. Something that can be powered over USB, for example, might be a good option. Finally, you have to think about how you're going to get the signal from the camera to whatever is sending the live stream out to the internet. Let's talk about this camera first, because this is a camera that you cannot buy anymore. It's no longer produced. It's just something that shows up on eBay every now and then. So this is an example of what you would want to get. It has all the aspects that I think are really important for buying any sort of camera, or if you're going to borrow one from a venue that you happen to be hosting the event at. It is small, so it transports really easily. And it's plastic, so it's probably not going to break when I'm transporting it in my car with something much heavier like a field perimeter. It doesn't even have a battery in it. It can be powered off of USB, which is really nice. It's a micro USB port, so you have to make sure you have the right cable and everything. Any adapters that you need to actually make the camera work also need to be considered. It has a 1/4 inch 20 thread mount point on it. This is the same type of screw that you would find on a camera tripod, many lighting stands. It's very versatile and very easy to find things that work with it. So for example, this nice clamp that I was able to find has a 1/4-20 screw on top that works with this camera, and it gives me a lot of flexibility of where I'm able to put it. So, for example, if I want to put it clamped to the outside of the side of the field in an area where it's not going to get hit or anything like that and just peeking in, I have that flexibility because of that mount point. And you can very easily find a bunch of other accessories that would work for it, especially if you're going to mount it on top of something like a C-stand. If you happen to be using a stand like that to already hold your timer display, it's very convenient. It has a micro HDMI port, but that's not the full story, so you have to be careful. Because many cameras have some sort of HDMI out, whether it's a micro HDMI port or a full-size HDMI port. But that's not enough, because when you plug in many cameras, it might assume that you are trying to play a slideshow of pictures that you've taken on that camera, or see the recordings that you've already made. On this camera, even, there is a micro SD slot for recording footage. So plugging in the micro HDMI, it might assume that that's what I want to do, because that's a feature that's most often requested. We don't want that, obviously, because we want to see a live view of what's happening on the camera right now. We need a clean, live HDMI output from the camera. The clean part of that is critical, because if I look at my camera's screen right now, there's a bunch of information around the screen about the white balance, the shutter speed, the ISO, everything is there. It's nice information for the internal screen of a camera, but it's not something I want to see on the HDMI output that I'm sending to the internet for the live stream. So you need the ability to turn that sort of thing off. You need a clean HDMI out, as people call it. And not all cameras allow you to do that. So it's something you have to research and understand before you dedicate to using a particular camera for this purpose. So luckily, this little guy does allow for that. You can get a clean live HDMI output from it. It can be powered off of USB. You can omit having a micro SD card at all because you're not going to be making any recordings, and it mounts very easily. It's very portable. It's really nice. So this is a Xiaomi Yi action camera. It's really nice. I wish they still made it. The 4K version is 4K. You don't generally need 4K, but you can get a few of those. Just be careful. This is the non-4K version. It's the one that I prefer. It doesn't overheat. Many cameras, if you leave them set up for a long period of time, especially if they're trying to output 4K, will overheat and shut off on you, which is obviously a bummer if you're in the middle of a live stream. So not a specific brand recommendation there because it's no longer for sale, but if you can find a camera like this one and share the recommendation with me, I will happily test it out and share it with others. So you've thought about the camera itself, where you're putting it, how you're powering it. Make sure you have all the adapters that you need. Micro USB, micro HDMI. It gets to be a little bit much. All the cables that you need for power too can be a bit confusing depending on where you're trying to put this thing. Next, you need to think about how you're going to get the signal from the camera to whatever is sending the live stream. And most people's first instinct is, I'll go get a long HDMI cable because there's a micro HDMI out. I can do a micro HDMI to regular HDMI adapter and then have a long HDMI cable to send it the rest of the way. But you have to be careful because HDMI has some pretty hard limits on how long it's able to send a clean signal. So once you get to the 35 feet, 40 foot range, if you're using a cheap cable, you're probably not going to get a good signal on the other end. And you also start running into cables that are unidirectional as well. So you have to be careful that you're putting the right end at the camera and the correct end at the live stream box. Once you get up to that sort of length, 35 foot plus, what you may find is very useful is a fiber optic HDMI cable like this one. The cable itself is generally a bit thinner. Hopefully it has some sort of braiding or protection around it so it doesn't break very easily, because even as it came with this little bite at the end of the cable, makes me very nervous with a fiber optic cable because it's may not be outright broken, but any sort of bend like that can cause damage and can cause signal loss. And it's the kind of thing that's going to degrade over time. So especially if you're looking to get a cable that you're going to use event after event and season after season. You have to be aware of things like this. But with that said, a fiber optic HDMI cable like this that has fiber optic receivers and transceivers in each end of the cable can be really nice. Again, it's unidirectional, so make sure you get the right end at the right place. It allows you to get a bit more distance on the signal than you would with a traditional copper cable. That's not your only option though, because you can take the HDMI coming out of the camera and convert it to a different type of signal that travels further distances easily. Many times we do this by converting the signal to an SDI signal, and we have much longer SDI cables that can make the distance from wherever the camera is to whatever is sending the live stream out. And that may actually be preferable to you depending on which type of inputs you have on the live stream box. Our other option is something like this. This is one half of a pair of boxes that takes the HDMI signal in on one side and sends it out through Ethernet on the other side. What this allows you to do is have a much longer Ethernet cable, which is also much easier to find at greater lengths, and use that to transmit the video across a broader distance between the camera and the live streamer. These can be very expensive, so I would definitely look for sales if you're interested in one of these. And again, this is the type of thing that is not required for a successful First Tech Challenge event. So you don't have to go out and buy all of this stuff. I have borrowed so much stuff for so many events that we just have an understanding with certain venues that they have cameras that are available or a live stream box that's available. We know how they work. We've tested them out ahead of time, and we're able to offset that cost of doing this extra thing onto the venues themselves because they're already set up to do it. Maybe they often live stream out performances at their performing arts center, or they live stream out their athletics games to the world. So maybe they already have the facilities necessary to do this. You just need to have a conversation and understand what is available. Now, we've talked about the camera and the cable getting the signal from the camera down to whatever is sending out the live stream. Let's talk about that thing that's sending out the live stream, because basically you need something that's going to take a video signal. In my case, I'm often dealing with HDMI, so that's the terms I think of it in. Convert that video signal into something that can be sent to YouTube or whatever platform you're using to send all of this out. There are many ways to do this. If you have a camera capture card, like I'm using right now to get a feed from my camera into my laptop to record this video, I'm using an Elgato Camlink 4K. And that may be exactly what you need in order to get an HDMI signal from a single camera into a laptop so that you can use a program like OBS in order to send it out to the web. Basically, live streaming out the same as if you were live streaming yourself out to Twitch. There are also appliances that you can get that your venues may already have to make this very easy for you. For example, a venue that I've worked in before has a little live stream box. It has an HDMI port to take a video signal in, and when they hand it over to you from their IT department, it's already set up and ready to go with all of the streaming keys necessary to go out to an event that they've pre-created, and it's very simple. This is the same box that they use for many athletics events, so it's already available. It's free, which is really great, and it's so simple to set up. If you are looking for something more advanced, I've also gone to venues that have something like this. This is an ATEM Mini Extreme by Blackmagic You don't need to go out and buy one of these. Certainly not at full price, because they are expensive. They're the kinds of things that you buy if you are a professional doing this day after day, not something that you would buy if you're just using it once a month. So luckily, a venue that I've worked in plenty of times before has one that we were able to borrow. And what it does is it allows you to take multiple HDMI in or multiple SDI in, depending on what type of signal you're taking in. And it allows you to switch the video so you can have multiple cameras going at the same time and select which one is currently live. Maybe you have a wide shot camera in the audience that is getting a nice view of the opening ceremony and the award ceremony, and you have other cameras closer to the fields. Maybe you have multiple fields that you need cameras for, and you're able to switch off between them. Note that you need to have a person to do this, so it is an extra volunteer that you potentially need to have. On top of the HDMI ports that it has in, it also has an Ethernet port. So you can hook it up to the network of whatever venue you are at, and using a computer to give it the live stream key, it can stream out to various platforms. There's a selection of platforms that it supports, and YouTube is one of them. So for a more advanced setup, you can investigate doing something like this depending on what materials are available to you. Putting this all together, you have a camera that has clean HDMI output. It's easily mountable, hopefully very portable, put someplace where it's safe to be and not interfering with the gameplay. And you have a nice way of getting the signal from the camera to a live stream box, whether that's from an HDMI cable, like a 10 or 15 foot HDMI cable just going from the field to the scoring table if you're at a single field event, or a much longer cable running from the stands all the way to the scoring table using some other method of transmitting the data like SDI or Ethernet instead. And you have something at the scoring table, most likely, that is sending that out to the internet, whether that is a laptop running OBS, a live stream box supplied by the venue, or something like an ATEM Mini that can go straight out. What you have is another set of infrastructure that you have to think about. And I wanted to stress again that if you are a technical volunteer at an event, you have to think about the students and the robots first. All of this is extra. And at the end of the day, if it's not working, just forget it. And I know that might be hard to do because you may have put a whole lot of effort in to getting all of this set up, acquiring the materials, asking to borrow things, and you may have promised the teams that are at the event that they can send a URL out to everyone and have people watch. It may be kind of a bummer to give all of that up, but a successful day, again, is celebrating what the students have done, and we want to do that as effectively as possible. So your attention, especially if you are a technical volunteer, is best spent working with the students. If you have the capacity to do all of this, then that's really great. If you don't, then you definitely shouldn't feel bad and just let it go. I want to mention one more thing that's very important, because if you are live streaming out to a platform like YouTube, you have to start thinking about copyright. More than likely, you're playing some music at your event, and it is very important that you do not send that music out with the live stream. What you probably want to send is the game announcer and MC's microphones and any game sounds for the matches that are currently happening, so the people watching at home have a better understanding of what's happening, especially if the game announcer is talking about a rule violation or something else that affects the score that isn't obvious from the video alone. But music should be excluded from that. So more than likely, if you are approaching a live stream setup, that probably means that you've already put in effort to have a nice sound system at the events with mixing of microphones and music and game sounds. I'm assuming that if you are this far on your journey as a technical volunteer, you've probably already started getting involved with those sorts of things as well. That may not be the case, and that's definitely okay if it isn't, but chances are it is. So you probably have some sort of sound mixer at the event, and it may even be sitting on the scoring table with your scoring laptop and whatever is sending out the feed to the live stream. It's very nice if this mixer has some sort of effects or monitor out with separate controls for what actually goes to that output, so that you can basically mix what I would call an N-1 output for that live stream, where you are sending everything but the music to whatever is sending it out. Hopefully you have the ability to take output from your mixer mixed similarly to what you are sending to the speakers in the room, but you're not sending out the music. So N-1. That's not always available. So If that's the case, again, that's okay. It's okay to do a live stream without any sound. That is still valuable. You just have to understand what is available using the materials at your disposal and what you can accomplish with the time at hand. Because often you don't have enough time to set up everything necessary to make this all work. And again, that's okay. As long as you have a field that is set up correctly and robots can play a fair game for First Tech Challenge, you have the beginnings of a successful event, and you just need to help the students get through the rest of the day. That was a lot of thoughts about live streaming. This is something that I am just getting into, and I'll be testing out a new setup on December 16th at my next event. So hopefully it goes well, and I'll have an update for you then. I hope you enjoy it. Go out and see what you can do with the materials that are available at your disposal, and I'll see you at the field.